Your solar setup violates HOA.
That's fine.
It's weird. Pay up.
I still remember the day I opened my mailbox and found that letter from the HOA. You know, the kind crisp white envelope, official letterhead. The whole 9 yards. My hands were actually shaking as I read it, because I knew exactly what it was about. They were fining me $1,500 for installing what they called unauthorized solar barriers on my property. Apparently, my solar panels were ruining the aesthetic appeal of our pristine neighborhood. I actually laughed out loud right there at the mailbox, and my neighbor Mrs. Peterson gave me the strangest look. But here's the thing. I wasn't laughing because it was funny. I was laughing because of what I knew was coming. And spoiler alert, the HOA had absolutely no idea what they'd just walked into. Let me back up a bit and give you the full picture. I live in what I'd call a typical suburban neighborhood in Arizona. You know, the tight, perfectly manicured lawns, houses that all look vaguely similar, and an HOA that treats the neighborhood bylaws like they're the 10 Commandments handed down from on high. The summers here are absolutely brutal. I'm talking temperatures that regularly hit 115 degrees, sometimes even pushing 120. Your car becomes an oven. Walking outside feels like opening an industrial furnace. The air conditioning isn't just a luxury, it's literally a survival necessity. So last spring I made what I thought was a pretty smart decision. I installed solar panels on my roof and solar barriers along the western side of my property. Now, these barriers aren't just regular solar panels. They're these really cool vertical installations that provide shade while also generating electricity. They look kind of like modern art installations. Honestly, with these sleek black panels that angle to catch the afternoon sun, they were cutting my electricity bill by about 60%, and they were keeping that brutal western sun from turning my house into a microwave. I was pretty proud of myself, not gonna lie. The installation took about a week, and I noticed some of the neighbors giving me looks, but I didn't think much of it. I checked the county regulations, got all my permits, made sure everything was up to code. What I didn't do, and yeah, this was probably my mistake, was submit the plans to the HOA for approval first. In my defense, the HOA bylaws were written back in 2006, and they don't mention solar installations at all. Not once. The only thing they say about modifications is that they can't negatively impact the visual harmony of the neighborhood. Super vague, right? Well, apparently the HOA board decided that my solar barriers were absolutely destroying this so-called visual harmony. The letter I got wasn't just a warning. It was a formal violation notice with a $1,500 fine attached, and a demand that I remove the installations within 30 days, or face additional penalties of $500 per week. They actually used the phrase eyesore 3 times in one paragraph. Primera, counted. Now, I'm generally a pretty calm person. I don't like conflict. I pay my HOA dues on time. I keep my grass at the approved height. I even volunteered for the Neighborhood Watch program last year. But something about this letter hit me wrong. Maybe it was the condescending tone. Maybe it was because I was trying to help the environment and save money. Or maybe it was because I knew our neighborhood power grid was already struggling, and I had just taken a huge load off of it. I decided to fight back. One submitted a formal appeal. I requested a hearing with the HOA board. The hearing was scheduled 3 weeks later. Mid-June. Perfect timing. The real heat was just starting. I spent those 3 weeks doing my homework. I pulled data on neighborhood power consumption. One research states solar regulations. I even consulted an attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. 10 Primera. The hearing took place at the community center. Tuesday evening, the board president, Gerald, sat at the head of the table, a retired accountant who took his role way too seriously. 4 other board members sat beside him. About a dozen residents watched from the chairs, mostly older folks. Watching HOA. Drama like reality TV. Gerald read the complaint out loud. He emphasized words like unauthorized and violation, like I was on trial. When it was my turn, primera está yet calm. I explained the permits were county approved. I showed energy savings data. I mentioned Arizona solar rights laws. Then Gerald cut me off mid-sentence. Esa, we're not concerned with your financial benefits or your environmental crusades. We're concerned with property values. The board nodded along. They had already decided. The vote was 4-1. Fine upheld. Removal ordered. Sandra was the only one who voted no. She owned solar panels too. I had 30 days to comply. I walked out furious. But I had a plan. Those panels were staying. I filed a legal challenge. The removal order was paused. The HOA wasn't happy, but they were stuck. Then they just stepped in. 2 weeks later, forecasts turned scary. A massive heat dome was forming. Meteorologists warned of record-breaking heat. Temperatures above 120 degrees, 4 days. When the heat hit, it hit hard. Day 1, 118. Day 2, 122. Day 3, 125. The news showed eggs frying on sidewalks. Even the weathermen looked scared. Then the power grid started failing. Everyone ran their AC non-stop. The system couldn't handle it. Rolling blackouts began, 4 to 6 hours at a time. Neighborhood by neighborhood. My house stayed cool. Solar panels. Battery backup. Fridge running. Kids sleeping comfortably. Outside, my neighbors struggled. People sat in cars with AC on. Others checked into hotels. The community center became a cooling station. Lines wrapped around the building. And then there was Gerald, 4 houses down. On day 4, during a blackout, he tried setting up a generator. It kept sputtering. His face was red. He looked miserable. I almost felt bad. Almost. Day 5 changed everything. The power company announced longer blackouts. Up to 8 hours. They begged solar owners to maximize usage. The news ran a full segment on solar power. Charts. Interviews. Energy savings. That evening, someone knocked on my door. It was Gerald. He looked exhausted. Defeated. He asked to come in. I let him inside. Cool air. Ice water. 3 glasses. Then he apologized. He admitted the board was short. Residents were panicking. They wanted solar approvals fast-tracked. The heat wave lasted 9 days. 9 brutal days. That changed everything. When temperatures dropped to 105, solar companies flooded the neighborhood. 6 houses on my street alone. The HOA held an emergency meeting. They dropped all fines. They amended the bylaws. Solar installations were encouraged. Sandra led a group discount program. Within 3 months, 40% of homes had solar. Our neighborhood became a case study, used by the utility company. Grid resilience. Distributed power. I learned something important. People don't change. They change when consequences hit. The board wasn't evil. They were stuck in the status quo. It took a crisis to open their eyes. I still live here. My solar barriers are still up. They still save me money. Gerald and I are on good terms now. He got solar too. We compare energy data. Sometimes the neighborhood looks different. Panels everywhere. And honestly, it looks better. And that $1,500 fine, rescinded, written apology. I framed that letter right next to my energy bill. The one where I sold power back to the grid. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge. Sometimes it's just being right and waiting.